You're on mute, Mike.
How's this? Is it any better?
We have you.
All righty. Sorry about that. So, yes, hi, Mike Micklewright calling from Chicago, snowy Chicago at this moment in time. I'd like to welcome all of you. Thank you very much for attending. And during this very uncertain time in our history, this is a kind of a crazy time that we're all experiencing. And I know that as such, so many of our processes, ours included, have been upended, and so we're looking to improve and change and look at those processes to find out what is still the best way to do this effectively. With so many of us working from home. Now, many people have also told us that they're concerned about all of the progress that they've made with regard to developing a lean culture, a Kaizen culture, and they're very concerned that the habits that they've started, the behaviors that they've created within their organization may, in this time of crisis, dwindle, go away, and they're concerned about getting it back. And absolutely, this is not the right time to let any of our Kaizen management system practices dwindle away. This is the time to actually use them to our benefit, to improve our processes, to keep making sure that we have that continuous improvement culture all the time. And some of the tools that we use within our Kaizen business system include things like doing a Gemba Walk, as you know. Gemba Walk, for some of you who don't know, Gemba is a Japanese word that means the place where value is actually being added. And so we do Gemba Walks. And we need to do them properly, but it's a little bit more difficult to do so, isn't it? I mean, it's with the Gemba now being located in people's homes and remote offices all over the place, the Gemba's kind of moved to different locations. But thank goodness we have so much great technology in the year 2020, and it's possible to do virtual Gemba Walks. And not only possible, I have found that it actually works out better than almost face-to-face Gemba Walks in the virtual world, in the transactional world, in the office world, because we can all see the Gemba so well as we look at our laptops and we share desktops. So, so this presentation is about doing virtual Gemba Walks within your processes or for your processes for the purpose of developing leaders, for the purpose of continuous improvement. And so that's our focus today. So we'll be talking about things such as a leader standard work and how that relates to virtual Gemba Walks. We'll talk about doing a Gemba Walks, how to do Gemba Walks, and then the art of coaching, which is so critical and so important as we're doing Gemba Walks. And then we'll also talk about how do we do this virtually, and the importance of communication, and verbal communication now becomes even extremely more important than it ever was before, because we don't have the visual communication that we once had. So with that said, this webinar is being brought to you by Tundra Process Solutions. Tundra is our sponsor. And by that, what it means that they're basically enabling us to bring you this webinar for free. And so we've worked with Tundra. Tundra's worked with us in the past. And now it's time to thank Tundra for sponsoring us and allowing this webinar to occur. So Tundra Process Solutions is a Western Canadian distributor of diverse industrial process equipment for industries such as oil and gas, mining, forestry, municipalities, and many others. Their clients trust them to provide products and technology solutions that are crucial to building safe and efficient facilities. In addition to being a representative, for industry-leading products, Tundra manufactures a full range of custom-engineered solutions, including prefabricated panels, buildings, equipment, and truck offloading systems. So as I said, Tundra has worked with the Kaizen Institute. Dave Kennedy, who is the CEO of SSI Artificial Lift, which is a Tundra company, Dave said that SSI fully adopted the Kaizen principles during and after their move into a facility to ensure that the layout was efficient and processes were clearly defined and lean. The major impact for SSI using Kaizen is the development of the continuous improvement culture that's still being practiced today in this new world that we live in. The Kaizen principles not only allow us to meet the needs of the client, but it also involves all of the personnel in order to continuously improve. So thank you, Dave, and thank you, Tundra. So what are we talking about today? Well, we're going to start off with a brief intro, which is kind of comparing a traditional versus a Kaizen organization. And we have a video that we'll show you also that kind of gives you that sense of what is that transition from traditional to Kaizen organization. And then we're going to talk about a day in leader. What is a typical day like, and how that relates to leader standard work. We'll talk about some of the intricacies of leader standard work, some of the elements that are so important. And on leader standard work, what we always define is doing Gemba Walks. When do we do Gemba Walks? What is the frequency? What day, etc. And so there's a relationship, of course, with leader standard work and the Gemba Walk. Now, as we do Gemba Walks, we should be coaching. It's the art of coaching, how to coach properly, how to do a proper Gemba Walk. So we'll visit that and talk about coaching as well. Then we get into the section that's a little bit more specific that talks about Gemba Walks for virtual and transactional processes. And then finally, we'll end up with doing a little simulation with one of my colleagues. We'll do a simulated virtual Gemba Walk. So come along for the ride, and here we go. So first of all, we start talking about organizations, and so we want to compare the two. So on the left-hand side, we're talking about the traditional organization, which involves a lot of daily management and firefighting. So you see down the middle there, we have the different levels of management within the organization. Team members on the bottom, frontline management, middle management, and top management. And then you look over to the left and you see their involvement in certain things like daily management and firefighting. So for the most part, on the left side, in the traditional environment, most people at all levels are spending a lot of time on firefighting and daily management. In the upper left-hand corner, that would be more things that are more strategically oriented, innovation and breakthrough type things. So we want to transition. We want to move from that to the Kaizen organization, which changes. So you see the blue segment now is a little bit different. It's called daily management and standardization. So we are going about our processes, our business as usual, in a standardized process, in a standardized way. And all leaders also have standardized work. We call it leader standard work. So we see that there's still a good amount of time. A team member, as an example, is spending 95% of their time in that blue area, and maybe 5% of their time on the white area, which is problem solving and improvement. So we got that new band, but we need to teach people about problem solving and improvement. And one of the ways to start that, one of the origins, one of the sources of doing true problem solving and improvement is through doing Gemba Walks. So Gemba Walks becomes very important. But you see, as we go up the ladder, then the frontline management, middle management, top management, and so forth are spending more and more time on problem solving and improvement and innovation and breakthrough, and less time on daily management and standardization. So that's the transition that we want to make. Now, one of our clients really took this to heart. And for their objectives for 2020, they said, well, let's quantify this and let's set an objective. So in other words, they first are doing a study right now, kind of a day in the life of analysis of all their top managers to find out what is the percentage of time that they spend in business as usual today. So right now they're going through that process and quantifying that. Based on that, then they're going to set goals so that they spend more time on problem solving and improvement, innovation and breakthrough. And they're going to do this for the different levels within management. That's great. That's perfect, because they're really practicing what is preached here. And what we're trying to do is get away from day-to-day business as usual for upper levels of management and middle levels of management, and more into working on the system, working on the processes. And we do that. One of the tools that we use to do that is through Gemba Walks. Now I want to play you a video.
Mike?
Yes.
I thought I'd just interrupt. Your video isn't on. We don't have the benefit of your picture in the corner there.
Okay, we'll keep going then. So I'm going to play you a video called "The Submarine Captain," and so please listen to this and pay attention to what the captain says, and perhaps types of questions that he asks during this. And this video is available on YouTube as well, if you'd like to show it to others as well. So we'll go ahead and play that now.
I was trained for one submarine. My guys were trained to do what they were told. That's a deadly combination. We all know organizations where people just follow the leader into disastrous situations. So I got my guys together and I said, hey, we got a problem here. I was trained for another submarine. You're trained to do whatever nonsense comes out of my mouth. That's right, Captain. I mean, they knew. They already knew. I was pretty much talking to myself. So I said, what are we going to do? What are we going to do, guys? And we talked about it. Okay, what I really wanted to do was get ready for the inspection. But we were sitting in the wardroom. We spent a couple hours. We were talking about it. And we came up with all these different things. And, well, you Captain, you just got to be smarter. You got to give better orders. It's like, well, how am I going to learn a whole nuclear submarine, miles of valves and pipes? I spent a year learning Olympia, 2 weeks over here. So in a year, we'll be safe? That's not going to work. We had to deploy the submarine in 6 months. So we talked about it, and they said, okay, there's only one logical solution. We figured it out. They're pointing at me. You shut up. What do you mean? That's not what captains do. That's not what captains of nuclear submarines do. They walk around. They give orders. They sound like Russell Crowe. Head 2/3, dive, make it up 500 feet. Helm left 15 degrees weather, steady course 255. Load torpedoes and tubes 1, 2, 3, and 4. Flood down, open outer doors, right? I thought about it. And you know, right. So at that point, I vowed never to give another order. And if you came down on my submarine, it'd have been very confusing because you couldn't have pointed. It'd have been hard to say, well, who's the captain here? Because you wouldn't have seen me giving orders. I did retain one order. The final order to launch a weapon, a torpedo or a missile, I kept with me because I felt that since that was going to result in the deaths of other human beings, that I didn't want that on anyone's conscience but mine. That was my moral and ethical responsibility. But even though everything else in the Navy, there's long lists of things that says the captain has to authorize. Captain should authorize. You got a couple nukes in your group, they'll tell you it's true. Captain authorize, submerge the ship, get underway, start up the reactor, shut down the reactor, connect to shore power, divorce from shore power, on and on, break rig for dive, on and on and on, pages of these things. I just refused to give those orders. What we replaced it with was intent. Instead of giving instructions, if you want your people to think, don't give instructions, give intent. So they would come to you, hey, what do you want me to do? Well, left full rudder, steady course 255. No. So what are we trying to accomplish here today? Well, we're trying to get in position so that when the enemy submarine comes through, okay, so where do you think we should position the ship? Maybe over here. Good idea. Go there. You give intent to them, and they give intent to you. So my officer stopped requesting permission. And every other submarine, Captain, request permission to submerge the ship. Submerge the ship. Submerge the ship, aye. On Santa Fe, Captain, I intend to submerge the ship. Very well. And they did it. And it might seem like it's a very small, nuanced change of language, but it was hugely powerful because the psychological ownership now shifts to them. They need to discover the answer. Otherwise, you're always the answer man. You can never go home and eat dinner. And so we started doing this. And it was hugely powerful. Actually, we went another step. Then I got smarter and I said, when the officer said, Captain, I intend to submerge the ship, I would ask him, well, what do you think I'm thinking right now? And he'd look at me, hard to tell. I'm guessing you're wondering whether it's safe. Bingo! I said, well, convince me it's safe. He said, Captain, I intend to submerge the ship. All men are below. Hatches are shut. Ship's rigged for dive. I checked the bottom deck. The submarine's in the water that's been assigned to us. Then later I would ask them, is it the right thing to do? And they would say, well, yes, sir, because our mission requires that we... And these are the two pillars that I think support this idea of giving control. These are the two pillars that need to be in place. The technical competence, which is represented by, is it safe? And the organizational clarity, which is represented by, is it the right thing to do? and you put those things in place, and then you can give control, and you give control, and you put those things in place. And you are off to the races. So think about what's happening now. My officers are starting to think like me, because I have to think like, where should we do the ship? And so the guys below them. Now this took 24 hours to happen. It took a couple years for the full implementation, but immediately there was change. The officers started thinking like me. So pretty soon I could go in the engine room, find the engine room lower level watch who was taking logs in the lube oil pumps, and he would know what the submarine was doing. He would know whether we were up tight, close to the enemy, it was time to stay quiet, or whether we had backed out a little bit, and this may be a good time to change filters and make a little bit of noise. A year later, we received another inspection. A year later, we received an inspection. The inspecting team gave us the highest grade they had ever seen. Not that year, not in the Pacific, ever seen. Why? I mean, this crew had a captain who was a dummy. It's because that needle started moving up. And on another submarine, there was one guy in charge, one guy giving orders, one guy thinking, and 134 people doing what they're told. I don't care how smart you are. On my submarine, I got 135 thinking, active, passionate, creative, proactive, taking initiative people. It's a tidal wave. You don't stand a chance.
So, all right. So, 1 second here. Okay. So, some important notes, important points about this. Number one, he talked about intent. And that's the idea about doing a Gemba walk, a proper Gemba walk, is that we want to know that what is the intent. So if the comment that was made, if you want to get your people to think, you give them intent. So they need to know the intent, and we need to find out if they know the intent. Other questions that the captain asked, he asked, is what are we trying to accomplish here? And then the other big one is, what do you think I'm thinking right now? So all of these were deep questions. And this is what we do in a Gemba walk, is because what we're trying to do is develop leaders. And we're trying to do so by asking questions, asking challenging questions. Our goal, we'll talk about this later too as well, is to get people to see the waste in the system, to think by asking deep questions, and then get them to take action. So this video is very, very important, and it gives the idea of what a good Gemba walker should be like and the types of questions that they should ask. Now, one of our slides that we use quite often is regarding leadership behavior. And with regard to leadership behavior, we want to make that transition again from the left to the right. So you have traditional leadership behaviors on the left, such as short-term focus, and we want to move towards a long-term focus. We want to move from push system to a pull system. We want to move from local optimization to overall optimization. So these are the types of behaviors that we want to transition to. Now, in the lower right-hand corner is what this presentation is primarily about. It's about learning the behavior of treating people as assets, by respecting their minds, by respecting their brains, by asking them deep, challenging questions. But a leader is also a teacher. So a Gemba walker is a leader, and they're a teacher. They're also a learner. They're going there to learn and understand, but they're also there to kind of teach how to be a leader by asking these types of questions. This, of course, is all about the next item, which is go see for yourself at Gemba Walks. And then oftentimes we ask questions, deep questions, using the word why or how. But when we want to get to the root causes of problems, we might do so during a Gemba walk by asking why multiple times, just like we do in root cause analysis. And then finally, the last behavior you see on the lower right is everyone solves problems. And that's what we're trying to do is as we do a Gemba walk, we're talking to people, we're asking some questions. And we're asking them to also come up with solutions, and what are their ideas? What are their ways of improving the process? So in this next section, what we want to do is kind of go through what is the day in the life of a Kaizen leader? What does that look like? And so kind of look at these next 20 or so slides that go by very quickly with an idea of how that could possibly fit in to your life, to your work. So what we have here is a bunch of clocks, as you can see, and this represents a person's day. And so we're going to go through one slide for each of those clocks very, very quickly, like I said. And during for each one of those slides, there's a different activity that a person is going to be doing that will help to support and egg on and emphasize that Kaizen culture and developing that Kaizen culture. And this will then take us into leader standard work. So in the beginning of the day, we start the day off. It's at 7:50 a.m. Then we go on to conduct a team meeting at 8 a.m. Perhaps this is a daily Kaizen meeting. And by the way, we are going to have kind of a little plug here this Thursday, another webinar on virtual daily Kaizen or online daily Kaizen meetings. But in this particular case, this Kaizen leader has a daily Kaizen meeting or a huddle meeting at 8 a.m. At 8:10, they're going to confirm a smooth startup. This is, of course, applicable to the office environment, the transactional environment, as well as the manufacturing and the physical environment. It might include such things as looking at defects and have they been properly logged? Do we have the right people involved? Are they here? Do we have the right expertise? Do we need someone else? Do we have all the data and the tools that we need? So this is all about confirming a startup. And this might be at 8:10 a.m. for this particular person. At 8:30, they've got a time set aside to do other tasks. Now, these other tasks could be things like doing emails. A lot of people set time apart to do emails, and they might say from 8:30 to 8:45 or 50, I'm going to do emails, and then I'm going to do it again in the afternoon for another 15 or 20 minutes. The purpose of that is to not be interrupted throughout the day by emails, which takes our concentration off some of the things that we are doing that are important and proactive and preventive. At 9 o'clock, this person's going to update their huddle board. So perhaps their huddle board has hourly updates that are required, which is good. The more frequent, the better, to see how we're accomplishing or what we're accomplishing, or if we're on track for that day. So at 9 a.m., this person's going to update their huddle board. At 9:10, they're going to participate in the Tier 2 meeting. Perhaps there's a Tier 1 meeting, the first one at 8 a.m., and now there's a Tier 2 meeting with that person's supervisor and that person's peers, working peers. And there might also be some support personnel too as well at that meeting. So they're going to participate in a Tier 2 meeting at 9:10. At 9:15, very short meeting, they're going to spend some time on verifying standard work. So this might be an audit. For some of those who are familiar with the term kamishibai, which is a Japanese term for paper theater, but what it really translates into is a very simple visual audit system. And so at 9:15, this person's going to do that to make sure that we're following our standards, and if there aren't any deviations, and if there are deviations, then we're going to do something about that and make sure that it's recorded somewhere, like on a huddle board. At 10 o'clock, this person is going to update their huddle board once again. At 10:10, they're going to teach someone a skill, a job. Maybe it's only 15 minutes, maybe it's 20 minutes. Or they could also be learning a skill or a job from someone who reports to them, which is very necessary and very helpful. So they allot time during their busy day to teach or to learn at 10:10. At 11, they're going to update the huddle board. At 11:10, they're going to make sure that whatever they have done to 5S their workplace, that everything is in place. Everything is in order. So part of the last S, or the sustain, is to make sure that this is happening. And so at 11:10 a.m. that particular day, they are going to complete their daily 5S activities. At 11:30, they're going to do a Gemba Walk. So they're going to do a Gemba Walk at 11:30 of a particular process that's been defined with a particular person or two. At 12:30, they're going to update the huddle board once again. 12:40, complete other tasks. Maybe again, this is where their emails come in the afternoon, and they handle the emails from 12:40 to say 12:45 or 1 o'clock. At 1:30, they're going to update the huddle board again. At 1:40, they're going to do another Gemba walk, another short Gemba walk with perhaps some different people, different location. From there, they're going to go on to 2:30. They need to continuously update their huddle board as prescribed on the huddle board. And at 2:40, they're going to do some problem solving. They're going to work on some problem solving. Maybe this is a Kaizen event, some leftover activities and actions from a Kaizen event. Maybe this is something that came up on their daily huddle board meeting where it's an action and they have to determine a cause and a countermeasure. They're going to do this at 2:40 perhaps on this particular day. And then 3:30, they're going to prepare the work plan for the next day. 3:45, if there's any update of daily records that's required on the visual management board or the huddle board or elsewise, they're going to do that at 3:45. And so that's their day. That's their activity. Busy day. Now, you might think, oh, wow, how do we do all this? Well, you do it one step at a time. And we start with leader standard work, because leader standard work is going to basically tell you, inform you as agreed upon between you and your boss, what are the Kaizen type activities that you should be doing and what is the frequency. And so we document that on our leader standard work. Many companies start off slow and they build their leader standard work up over a period of time. But the whole purpose of this is, if you recall the first slide that we talked about, we're transitioning. We want to transition our leaders to doing a little bit less of business as usual to more problem solving, improvement, strategic work. And the leader standard work is the tool that's going to help us to do that. So what is leader standard work and what is it about? Well, it's going to identify some of the core tasks that we have to do for the long-term perspective of the company. It allows time for creativity. These are the things that are really important, because when a person, let's say, goes on vacation, or they perhaps are working overseas at a sister company or visiting a customer or supplier, the question is, who does their leader standard work? We don't want it to stop. If the person's gone for a week on vacation, it should not stop. The system should go on. So it's very handy, and what a lot of people do, a lot of companies do, and they should do, is to somehow delegate their leader standard work to a person who reports to them so that the work continues to happen and we're always continuously improving. That person then, of course, may delegate their leader standard work to someone else too as well. But this is going to identify those core tasks. It's going to also help us to make sure that we focus on certain things like adherence to standards, making time for improvement, making sure that we're spending some time on improvement, and making sure that we sustain those improvements. And all of this will lead to a very healthy, robust Kaizen culture. Why do we need it? Well, it does document the management system overall, what I'm supposed to do on a daily basis. And it's a baseline for further improvement. And it teaches us how to develop leaders. Because we do our leader standard work, we do the activities of our leader standard work, and our workers are the people who work for us, who report to us. They might be doing this with us, like a Gemba Walk, like a commission by audits, and they're learning from you. So they're learning by doing, not by just saying, hey, this is the way it is, but they're learning by doing. And it also allows us for a certain amount of accountability. I mean, if we truly believe as an organization that we want to continuously improve, because that's what we say, that's what we tell our customers, that's what we tell our suppliers, we have to live it. And this leader standard work is something that can help us to remain accountable to the mission, the idea that we need to always improve. And this is what's going to help us to do so. So it's an internal accountability that helps us to keep improving and keep striving for perfection. In this slide, we want to also show that there's a linkage between all of our leader standard work. So as an example, we have a general manager and a plant manager. We have an assistant manager, a group leader, and so forth. And there's some linkages. So in other words, let's say a general manager needs to do a Gemba Walk, and they're going to do it once a day or once every other day. Now they're doing a Gemba Walk oftentimes with a direct report. A plant manager, an assistant manager of some sort. And so on both of their leader standard work documents, if you will, they have to be linked. They're obviously doing Gemba Walks together, just like a short little meeting between the two of them. So there's linkages all the way throughout the system, which is going to pull and make sure that we make those improvements to all of our systems and all of our processes throughout the entire organization. Now, everyone has leader standard work. That's what's very important. That's a very important concept, all the way up the ladder. Now, how much of a person's time is dictated by leader standard work, of course, is going to vary by the level with a person is within the organization. So you kind of see on this chart on the lower left-hand side, you have team members, and maybe 95% to 100% of their life, their work life, is dictated by standard work. It's the standard work that they do every day. It's their processes. If they're making widgets or whatever it might be, that's what they're doing. Now, as you move up to the next level, the team leader, maybe 70 to 80% of their time is dictated by standard work, leader standard work this time. And the group leader, maybe 50% of his or her time is dictated by leader standard work. And middle management and top management, but even top management, it might only be 5 to 10% of their life, of their work life, is dictated by leader standard work. However, the most important thing is they do have leader standard work. There are some things that they should be doing in pursuit of continuous improvement, in pursuit of ensuring that everyone understands that this culture of continuous improvement is important to the organization. Top management also must be showing that they do their leader standard work, such as Gemba Walks or Kamishibai audits or involvement in a Kaizen project. That's what's most important. That's the message that we want to make sure that we understand and people understand. With regard to leader standard work, there's all kinds of different examples. I could show you dozens of different examples that I've had, because every company does it a different way and they have a different take. But the concept is always the same. The concept is that I am going to make sure that I do some continuous improvement type activities, such as audits and daily huddle meetings and daily Kaizen and so forth, on a scheduled basis, and to ensure that accountability. So on the left-hand side was an example of a client of mine who showed their leader standard work, and they had one document that he carried with him all the time, and it had his standard work for every single day of the week. Many people just carry one day at a time. This person had all 5 days, or all 5 days in 1 week, shown there. But you see the examples of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and how the activities varied, but they're all about Kaizen. They're all about lean. They're all about improvement. Following up on daily on Gemba Walks, 5S audits, observations of operations, Kaizen opportunities, on and on and on. And on the right side, you have another example. Both of them have time elements. Some of them have durations. So 7:30 to 7:45, I'm going to do this. Some of them have checklists, like the one on the right, a checklist to make sure that it's clear. Most of them always have a place to record notes and observations and waste that's seen, because these are now inputs into the daily huddle meetings. We want to make sure that those two are connected, that whatever we're observing throughout the day as we do the Kaizen improvement activities, the Kaizen management system activities, we want to make sure that those outputs are inputs into the huddle meetings, and they might become actions. So we suggest that the standard document should be with the leader at all times during the day. Now, some people do use their Outlook calendar, and they print it out and they carry that with them. But we recommend that it is something that is being carried with yourself, with the person throughout the day, so that we ensure that accountability. We can always take a quick glance, and we have a place to also take notes to be used as input into the huddle meetings. Oftentimes we use a checklist to note completion. We note reasons as to why things were not completed. We note missed targets. We record daily notes and observations, and we make available and visible to those who report to you and to your boss. Now, that's a really important thing, because in leadership we say, that we must practice what we preach. We must, if we want leaders to grow, we need to show them the way. We need to demonstrate that we do these things as well. So if we want our people to do their standard work, then we should do our standard work, and they should be able to see that we do our standard work. So oftentimes companies make their leader standard work, completed leader standard work, available and visible to people, whether it's at the huddle board meeting or just outside their office or whatever it is, but it's available and visible to people. Now, we also can use this as a record, because a boss should occasionally, according to his or her leader standard work, review the leader standard work effectiveness of those who report to him or her. We want to see if Is it working? Is it effective? Is the frequency right? Are we not doing certain things ever? And what do we need to change? Because this is kind of an agreement. It's a contract between the two people that this is what we want to do in order to support our people and to support a lean culture, a Kaizen culture. Okay, so that takes us out of leader standard work and brings us into the topic of Gemba Walks, doing Gemba Walks. And what is a Gemba Walk itself? Relationship. On the leader standard work, we would identify the need to do a Gemba Walk. And in some location, perhaps on the leader standard work, or perhaps on a visual management board or a huddle board, but it's clear to all the time of the Gemba Walk and the focus. What is the process of focus? What are we really focusing in on? And then who else is involved during that Gemba Walk? So somehow that should be clear, and we should be held accountable to making sure that we do those Gemba Walks. Now, why do we go to the Gemba? That's a basic question. That's a deep question. Might be a good question to ask, in fact, during a Gemba Walk. Why am I doing this? Why do we go to the Gemba? Why is it important? Well, quite simply, it says to be at the real place, to see the real thing, and understand the real facts to address the real problems. There's a word that's used quite often in that little sentence, and that's the word real. It's not to say that the data or the information that we receive in a meeting is fake, is not real, but we don't really have a sense of the real world. The only way to get a sense of the real world and what is really happening is to be there, is to see what's really happening. So a Gemba Walk is process focused, very process focused. We need to see our processes in action, okay, whatever they might be. And I mention this, and I might mention this a couple of times because I know there's a lot of organizations that say they do Gemba Walks, but in reality, they don't. And I find it interesting because a lot of companies say, oh, geez, we thought we were doing Gemba Walks for years, and yet now I understand that we're not. So sometimes you'll see a group of people, managers, and they'll walk around from one board to another board, and they'll call it the Gemba Walk. Well, in that particular case, we're watching a board, and we might be watching a meeting, but we're not watching the process. So a Gemba Walk is about watching our processes. So it's a major part of the lean management process to support a process focus. It helps us with sustaining our key processes and making sure that they're robust and they constantly work, and we're constantly challenging them and making sure that they're effective, and challenging whether or not we can come up with a different way to make it more effective. Who uses it? Well, anyone who has people reporting to them is what we usually suggest. And the frequency is a function of your leadership level and the agreed upon leader standard work. So there is no hard fact suggestion. It really depends on the situation and how things are evolving. Now, in this particular COVID-19 situation that we're all living through, you would think that there's a necessity to actually do more Gemba Walks right now. And that is important to do so. And you have to think about that, even though there's so many fires to fight right now. One way to be more proactive is to look at the Gemba Walks because processes have changed. They're different. And this webinar is going to teach you how to do that. What are some of the components? Well, again, it's an observation of the process in person where the work is done. So again, from a virtual standpoint, from a transactional standpoint, we're still in person. We can see, we can share screens as we're going to do, and we can make sure that we see the work actually being done. So it's still possible to do in this virtual environment. It's factual based. We want to, one of the purposes is to empathize. We want to empathize and see, wow, I understand the process. I see what you're saying, but it's kind of a pain. That involves a lot of time. How much time does that take? Is there another way to do that? Or that's a lot of waiting. What can we do differently so that we're not waiting that long? Or that's a lot of inventory, big pile of stuff. What can we do differently so that we don't have that? So why do we Gemba Walk? Well, when we are Gemba walking, we're teaching people. We're growing leaders, quite honestly. by asking questions, just like that submarine captain. Tell me what I'm thinking of right now. I mean, what do you think I'm thinking? It's like, whoa, wow. You know, when we do that, we are teaching them to be leaders. We're teaching them how to think like a leader. But when we teach via questioning, we're also getting them to see waste that perhaps they're accustomed to seeing or dealing with, and it's been no big deal to them. They're just used to it. You're used to seeing it. We want to challenge the knowledge. We want to get others to think, question them all the time, and question the process and understand the assumptions. We want to drive process improvements. We want to get them to do. So three main things there that you'll see again later. Get others to see waste, get them to think, and get them to do. This will all help to promote leadership. Now, when we do Gemba Walks, just like most things that we do in a Kaizen culture environment, is that they're done frequently and in short durations. That's a change for many of us. We usually like to do things in batches, right? But no, we're saying not. We're going to do things more like single piece flow. We're going to do them frequently and in short durations. So perhaps a Gemba Walk once a day for 15 minutes is not a bad idea. So what is a Gemba Walk not? Gemba Walk is not telling people what to do. It's not a problem-solving period. It's not a forum to inform people of your knowledge. It's not ego-driven. This is all based on, hey, I want to come in and I want to learn. Truly, you want to learn. This is the idea. And we're not micromanaging. We're not telling them what to do. We're asking, what do they do and why? So it's not discussion-based. It should be observation-based. So yes, there might be some discussions, but we want to get right back to the doing. Let's see what you're actually doing. And also I said it's not going to the Gemba. So a lot of people say, yes, we go to the Gemba. That's a Gemba Walk. Well, no, not really. Going to the Gemba is just going there because maybe you want to observe a problem, you want to observe an issue, but it's not necessarily a Gemba Walk in which we are watching a process and seeing a process in order to teach and point out the waste and identify different solutions and possibilities. It's not disciplinary, so it should never be. Otherwise, the Gemba Walks get a bad taste with a lot of people. This is not there to berate someone. It's not a way for the Gemba Walker to track action. So in other words, the Gemba Walker should not be saying things like, well, I'm going to be taking some notes, or I'm going to follow up with you next week. I'm going to record this as an action, and we're going to do this. We want them to take the ownership. Ideally, we want the people that we're talking to take that ownership and make sure that they're doing that. As soon as a Gemba Walker starts recording actions and notes, then it's on their shoulders, and that's not the goal of what we're trying to achieve here. So you all know, I assume, or many of you know, the 7 wastes. Some of you may call it the 8 wastes, depending on your organization. And here you are. This is the list of the wastes. I'm not going to go through each one of them. You can read them, or you know what they are. But what we're trying to do as we go through and do a Gemba Walk is to teach people about the waste and identify the waste and make them understand and see the waste for what it is by empathizing with them. So we want to kind of keep this in mind. Some people have actually put on their leader standard work a quick little reminder of the 7 wastes so that when they do a Gemba Walk, they have those there as that reminder. So what we'd like to do now is to try something out. I'm going to have my colleague, Jesse Martin. Jesse, can you say hi?
Hello.
Hello.
And Jesse and I are going to do a quick little simulation. So I'm going to ask Jesse to share his screen. And as he's getting that ready to share his screen, I'm going to do a Gemba Walk the improper way. How not to do a Gemba Walk, and this will be a quick little simulation. So Jesse, just tell me when you're ready, and then we'll take it from there.
Okay, I think we're ready.
Okay, so right now, folks, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into acting mode starting now. Hey, Jesse, how you doing?
Hey, good. How are you, Mike?
Good. I know that you saw me sent to you an invite for today because right now what I want to do is what's called a waste walk because what I want to do is kind of look at all your non-value-added activities that you do from day to day. Is that okay?
I try to avoid those.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, I know. But I went to that class. I don't know if you went to the class yet, but there's a class on waste walks, and they said like 80 to 90% of a person's day who works in the office is full of waste, and so that's what I'm trying to do is to see the waste that you create. So what I want to do is just, as I asked you before, is just kind of tell me what's the process. I asked you to show me a process that you do. So what would be a process?
Yeah. So when we were speaking earlier, I was showing you the process of preparing our presentations for the different webinars. So I use a couple different platforms as we get ready for that. So the screen that I'm showing you here is the work that we do in the Canva platform. And we also use a daily Kaizen process with our Miro board. Would you like me to show you that?
Yeah, well, let me just back up. What did you say again? Because I'm trying to take some notes here too. So what was the thing that you just said prior to that then?
Well, so we utilize a Canva platform to build out our presentations to make them a little more accessible and easier to download in a PDF format later. So we try to use this platform as much as possible, and also because it's easier to comply with our brand standards.
Oh, so you said more accessible, huh? So I mean, I've heard that a lot of times it's not accessible to some people. Do you make a lot of mistakes in that area? Is that something that happens? Because I understand sometimes people complain about not being accessible.
I mean, I try not to make mistakes, and we try to make sure that we're serving everybody on the team as quickly and correctly as possible.
Okay. Well, maybe we should look at that. I can get you some. You know what? I'll make it an action for myself to get you some data on what I've heard about the lack of accessibility. So anyway, but you were saying, well, go ahead and carry on there, Jesse. What was your next thing that you wanted to talk about?
Well, so I could walk you through our process in the morning that we get ready for the day with our virtual Kaizen board.
Okay, sure. Let's do that.
Okay, so let me just change screens really quickly here. So this platform is called Miro. And
oh, yeah. Okay. Well, we use a different platform too. Well, anyway, maybe you could show me what your platform is like, because ours is really good too, and I could show you some information on ours too as well. Okay, but go ahead and show me what you got.
Okay. Well, so this is our team, and this is where we keep track of how everybody's feeling every morning, and we also like to learn different things about each other. So this is our little passion board that we have over to the side, just to grow closer. So
passion board. Passion board? What does that mean? I mean, that sounds kind of funny to some people, doesn't it? I don't know if that would go well in our organization.
I mean, our team really likes it because we don't get to see each other very often. So it's a nice opportunity to learn about each other.
Okay. All right. Well, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah. So what's next? What do you got next?
Well, so we always follow our set agenda that we use every day to make sure that we're doing the correct things in the correct order. And then my favorite part of the board is where we share our appreciation and milestone and major successes from our clients.
Jesse, I'm sorry. I you know what? I got a meeting. I just been called to. This has been good. So thank you for doing that. And I hope this was helpful to you. But I know I said I've got some notes here. I'm going to send some information to you about other ways of doing things. But thanks for taking the time. I hope you like the waste walk the way it was.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Jesse.
Okay.
Okay, everyone. So, well, let me ask you, Jesse, how do you feel?
Gosh, it's that's a rough Gemba walk. That's not very fun to be on the receiving end of somebody telling you that your process is wasteful.
Yeah, I understand. And first of all, can you see my screen? Are we good there?
Yep.
Okay. So yeah, just to point out a couple things to people. You know, we do a lot of Gemba walks and Gemba walk coaching and so forth. It's funny. Years ago, I used to teach Gemba walking many years ago, and oftentimes you teach, and then you kind of think, okay, well, they got it, they understand, and then maybe sometime later, months or years later, you come back and you realize that they're not doing Gemba walks. It's not what was taught, and they've reverted back to certain things like micromanaging or instill in fear or whatever it might be. So the simulation that Jesse did, and Jesse, thank you for doing that. I appreciate your being the other end of our simulation. But there are some things that are exaggerated, but there are elements of that entire simulation that I have seen with many different people who claim to do Gemba walks, and this is not the purpose. In fact, people should be looking forward to Gemba walks as they are done, and as they're done correctly in the right way. They should be looking forward to it because it's a good experience, and they see that there could be results that are generated from a good, well done Gemba walk itself. So, you know, the idea is that I called it a waste walk. The idea is that I referred to 80–90% of his work is wasteful. That just set the wrong tone, the wrong message. I was telling more than I was asking. Jesse hardly got the idea of, or hardly got to show a lot of what he actually does because I was too busy asking questions or inserting my comments. So it's a lot about listening too as well, and really trying to understand. It was more, from my standpoint, it was more ego driven. I kind of wanted to show Jesse what I knew or what I did, and that's not right either. So we should be walking into this as wanting to learn, truly learn from what is being shown. And so at the end of this presentation, we'll do a good simulated Gemba walk. So at this point, though, I'm going to encourage everyone to take a quick 30-second stretch break. So get up, walk around your bedroom, your kitchen, your dining room, wherever you are, your apartment, and take 30 seconds. I'm going to do the same. Okay, let us proceed. And we move on to coaching. Very important part. Coaching can be done at any time. We can coach whenever we wish. But coaching should always be part of a Gemba walk. So one way or the other, we should always be coaching as we do Gemba walks, but we can coach other times too as well. It is an art. It's a skill. It's something that I feel like I'm still trying to perfect, to get better at. It doesn't come naturally to a lot of people. It doesn't come naturally to a lot of leaders because some leaders have moved their way up in the organization by, doing things like micromanaging and telling people what to do and so forth. And so you have a wide variety. If you are one of those people that have a hard time in actually coaching, it might be helpful to, and I do this as a matter of fact, but when I know that I'm going to do a real Gemba walk and coaching can be part of that, I kind of tell myself, I'm going to play a role, just like I just played a role a little while ago, but I'm going to play a role. And it's kind of like acting in a way, because if it doesn't come naturally, then you're almost like, you have to have a way of transitioning to this coaching role. And so it's a good thing to do mentally, to think that, okay, during this next 15 minutes or a half hour, I'm going to play the role of a coach during this Gemba walk. So a coach is more than a manager. It is a teacher. It's a model. It's a mentor. It's one who is always constantly teaching, but they teach by asking questions and learning so that everyone learns more. The objective is to get people, the student or a person that we're doing a Gemba walk, to get them to think differently. Again, remember the submarine captain at the very beginning of the video. He says, if you want to get people to think, you have to tell them the intent. So what is the intent of this process? Ask them, what is the intent of this process? And then ask them, how do we achieve that? How do we know we achieve that? So the student learns to see where lean principles can be applied. So that's why it's always nice to have in your head those wastes. What are those wastes? Because what we're going to be doing as we walk through a process, we're going to observe the waste. And again, these wastes that are being observed are just kind of taken for granted by many people. This is part of their normal day. So they may not see it as waste until you start talking about it. So this is going to open up the eyes of the learner, of the student. So some of the lessons that we learn is that it's a slow process. Remember, it's a mindset change. Going back to the submarine captain, that's why I love that video so much, because there's so many great lessons in there, and how we can apply it to doing a Gemba walk. But at one point, I think you might have said that there were some immediate changes within 24 hours, but the full effect of his new leadership style took 2 years. It takes a while. In the Kaizen world, in the Gemba world, we talk about 6 months sometimes to make this transition for where people feel comfortable about what a Gemba walk really is. And it should not be a threatening environment, but it's there for people to truly learn and to truly improve and respect my mind and respect my brain. Shigeo Shingo, one of the founders of the Toyota production system, once said, and this is one of my favorite quotes, there are 4 purposes of improvement. They are easier, better, faster, and cheaper. These 4 goals appear in the order of priority. Okay, in the order of priority. Interesting, right? Because easier is at the top of the priority list. And so my question at the bottom is, why is that important for a coach to know? Because a lot of the questions that a coach asks will be around the idea or the concept of easiness. So, wow, that must be a real pain. You got to walk back and forth 200 feet or so. How many times do you have to do that? 8 times a day, back and forth, just to get some supplies or to get the materials or to measure this part? Wow, that might be a pain. Someone might say, well, no, it's not really a pain. Well, but if you're busy and you got a lot of things to do, yeah, I mean, that's kind of a pain. Is there any way that we can make it easier? And so we start using that word about making it easier, because that's a word that we can all relate to. Everyone wants to make their own personal lives easier. We can all relate to it. So it's a good question to ask as a coach. Jim Collins, who wrote the great book called Good to Great, said about leadership, we were surprised, shocked really, to discover the type of leadership required for turning a good company into a great one. The good to great leaders seem to have come from Mars. They are self-effacing, quiet, reserved, and even shy. These leaders are a paradoxical blend of personal humility and personal will. They are more like Lincoln and Socrates than Patton or Caesar. Great comment. This is the type of people that we're looking for in a Gemba walk. We want people who are self-effacing, quiet, reserved, even shy. We really want to learn. Humility shows. We want to be there to learn. So we need to move from this know-it-all type mentality of being a knower, being a know-it-all, to a learner. I walk into the process and I want to learn from you. Truly, teach me. Tell me about what you do. Tell me why it's this way. What are your assumptions? Why does it need to be this way? Our goal when coaching and doing a Gemba walk, and this is the simplest to remember. When I teach a class on this, and when I'm teaching leaders about this, I say, try to remember this slide, because it's easy. When you're doing a Gemba walk, you're primarily trying to get them to see the waste, non-value added work, get them to think. We always know how they're thinking when they're scratching their head or they take some time to pause to think about an answer to the question. and help them to do, help them to take action. Now, a little bit more detail about these three questions, or these three objectives, I should say, is as a coach, how do we get someone to see? We watch and ask them what is really happening, what is actually happening, and ask them, well, what do you observe? Don't tell them what you observe, but what do you see here? What's going on? Why is there commotion? Why does it have to be this way? What do you hear? Is there a certain sense? I mean, do you notice how people are working or feeling? Why are they looking at us? Why are they so busy? Why are their heads down and involved in their work? And what do you think or feel about what you see? So we're trying to get them to really observe. People talk about being on the floor, being at the Gemba, but doing a Gemba walk is really taking time to see and to hear. Okay. Now, one of the things you won't see, I'll tell you in advance, of our simulation that Jesse and I will do at the end of this presentation is great length of pause, and we're going to be going through a simulation. But what we want to do is to make sure that we're comfortable watching. It's okay to have long pauses where someone is doing something, someone is actually working, and you don't have to be talking constantly. So we might see some of that as we go through the simulation, but because of our short time span that we'll have, we may not. But I just want to make sure that you understand that it's important to realize that it's okay to not talk. It's okay just to observe, to watch. Now, how do we get people to think? We ask them questions like, well, what gave you that impression? Really? Oh, really? How'd you know that? How does anyone know that? Where are the standards? Where are the requirements? What's good? What's bad? What do you actually see or hear? And why do you think that? What are the reasons behind that? And what are your assumptions? Is there a reason why people think this? Is there a reason why you think this? So we're really trying to get them to think about what's going on there. And then finally, we want to get them to do. We want them to build mental circuits in their brains by now owning the problems. You're the leader. You're the Gemba walker. But now your job is to get them to now take the action, take ownership. Ask them how they show the waste, and ask them how they take action. How do you take action when you see a problem? When you do see waste or observe waste, what do you do about that? How do you make that visible to people? Make sure you recognize their achievements and their ideas. And then you could also say, not that you're taking notes and saying, I'm going to follow up with you. You could ask politely, do you mind if I follow up? Because you've come up with some great ideas. I'd love to see what you've done. Maybe I'll stop by in the next week or two. Do you mind if I do that? So you're kind of putting it back on them and taking ownership. These little subtle differences, like the submarine captain talked about, make a big difference overall in owning the problem, in owning the action, in owning what is going to happen next. So we talk about using during coaching as we're going through Gemba Walks, the Socratic method. It's a discourse between two or more people that hold different points of view. And we're trying to stimulate critical thinking and generate ideas. That's our goal. And so we do this by the Socratic method of asking questions. We're not trying to win an argument. It's not a debate, but we're really trying to find out the truth. We also have to realize that coaching is a balancing act, and many of us have done well and are successful in what we do, and we're very results oriented, and we're not saying you got to stop that, but for the long term of the company and for the good of the people who are moving up in the organization you want to train as leaders, we need to develop them. So we need to take some time to develop them through Gemba Walks and coaching. We still need to get results, but we also need to have some time for Gemba walking and coaching. So sometimes you got to tell yourself whenever you see a problem or something occurring, and you want to make a suggestion, because we all do that. Many of us want to do that. You just want to say, oh, just try this. This is what I've done. This is great. You got to like bite your tongue and say, no, I'm not going to do that. So bite your tongue. Think about how to frame the concept or the idea into a question. How can we do this differently? And bite your tongue, but let them have the opportunity to come up with other ideas and multiple ideas. And then you want to finish the Gemba Walk somehow. Simple little question at the very end. Something like, so what'd you learn out of this? What value did you gain? Is there anything that you'll do differently as a result of this discussion? So we always want to finish it up with something like that. Socrates said, true wisdom comes to each of us when we realize how little we understand about life, ourselves, and the world around us, or the plant around us, the office around us. And so what we're trying to do is gain wisdom. And we do that through Gemba Walks and coaching, and allow others to as well. So we're going to talk a little bit about specifically doing Gemba Walks in the transactional world, in the administrative world. So a material flow, or things moving through a facility, is now replaced by non-visible electronic data. So we need to visualize the process. We need to see the process, and analysis becomes key. So the different approach is that we want to see how the data is handled in the system and between teams, and we can see that electronically and virtually in our world. And then also we can ask the process performer to walk us through the process itself as if you were, or they were, a piece of data. So in other words, you know, if you think of the piece of data as a widget, as a component to a part, and we can see that widget moving through operations, we want to see that same data flowing through our transactional processes and into emails or spreadsheets or a Word document or a program or whatever it might be, and see that data being moved. So that might be applicable in certain circumstances. How can we see that? How can we see that happen? So, of course, we would always like to bring a team physically together. That's always the best option. But we can't do that in some cases, and especially today, we're not able to do that. So good facilitation, good communication, good listening skills are even more important in remote discussions. And a very important bullet at the very end of this page says, if analysis is part of the Gemba Walk, one needs to ask the person who is doing the work to verbalize their thinking so that they can see what is being looked at. So you're doing an analysis, you have a spreadsheet in front of you, and someone says, well, what I do here is I analyze this data and I compare it to this data and so forth. And so you, as a Gemba Walker, you say, well, can you verbalize what you're doing? What data are you looking at right now? What are you comparing it to? What is good and what is bad? What do you do as a result? So we want to verbalize the mental process. I've done that a lot in Gemba Walks, and it works quite well, actually. So one thing that we have to be aware of in our virtual Gemba Walks is you're asking yourself about your own voice. How does your voice sound? Is it friendly or engaging? And you can do this self-reflection with yourself, obviously, or you can ask other people, you know, how does my voice sound? How did I come across? Did I sound too demanding? Did I leave enough time or space for people to answer questions? Can people even tell when I was asking a question? I mean, I ask a question and it's dead silence. Why is that? So we have to be aware of how we say things. And so we're going to play a little game to demonstrate that. So I'm going to ask you to take a piece of paper and just draw the 6 boxes. You see the 6 white boxes? Draw those 6 white boxes in that same fashion. 3 up on top and 3 on the bottom. And I'm going to play you 3 recordings. And what I want you to do is to record in the box what that description is. So in other words, over here on the left, I have the speaker by number 1. So I'm going to play number 1. I'll play it twice. They're short little clips. I'll play it twice. And then you place number 1. If you think it's disbelieving and incredulous, you put it in that box. If you think it's enthusiastic, encouraging, you put it in that box. Okay, so hopefully you've got the process. Okay, and so we will play the first one now.
Okay, great. Can you explain to me why the first 3 process steps are organised in that sequence?
Okay, and one more time.
Okay, great. Can you explain to me why the first 3 process steps are organised in that sequence?
Okay, and number 2.
Okay, great. Can you explain to me why the first 3 process steps are organised in that sequence?
And one more time for number 2.
Okay, great. Can you explain to me why the first 3 process steps are organised in that sequence?
Okay, so we will go on to number 3 now.
Okay, great. Can you explain to me why the first 3 process steps are organised in that sequence?
And number 3 one more time.
Okay, great. Can you explain to me why the first 3 process steps are organised in that sequence?
And number 4.
Okay, great. Can you explain to me why the first 3 process steps are organized in that sequence?
And number 4.
Okay, great. Can you explain to me why the first 3 process steps are organized in that sequence?
Here's number 5.
Okay, great. Can you explain to me why the first 3 process steps are organised in that sequence?
And number 5 again.
Okay, great. Can you explain to me why the first 3 process steps are organised in that sequence?
And finally, number 6. If you got them all right, this should be easy. But if this doesn't match, then there's something else wrong.
Okay, great. Can you explain to me why the first 3 process steps are organised in that sequence?
And one more time.
Okay, great. Can you explain to me why the first 3 process steps are organised in that sequence?
That one didn't seem to work out right. Let me try.
Okay, great. Can you explain to me why the first 3 process steps are organised in that sequence?
Okay, so that was number 6. All righty, so here are your answers. Top left was 6, and you can read the rest. So what's the point of this? The point of this is to be aware of our voice, be aware of the messages that we're sending, especially things like frustrated and hurried. If we're doing Gemba Walks, we do want to show that we are truly curious and inquiring, because that is the point. We are there to learn, but you're also enthusiastic and encouraging. But if you're in a hurry, that's going to come across. And that this is not really the Gemba Walk that I'm used to or that I want to experience. So be very much aware, ask others about your voice, ask others about how they are perceived, your voice is perceived by others. So we have body language, and oftentimes we can't see this visually when we're doing virtual meetings unless we're sharing our video. And so from left to right, we see perhaps the person on the left is domineering, kind of boss-like. This is the way I believe it should be. The second one is inquisitive, curious, or just not sure, confused. The third one is engaged. I'm involved, actively involved. And the fourth one is frustration. Okay, well, we don't see that with voices. So we want to make sure that we use, we have 2 ears, we have 2 eyes, we have 1 mouth, and we want to use them in the same ratio. We want to make sure that we're paying extra attention to the use of pauses and word selection. We want to make sure that we listen very intently and truly understand without trying to think of what is the next thing that I'm going to be saying. Okay, so we need to use the same ratio of our ears to our mouth. Questions that we ask. What is the purpose of this process? Kind of like the submarine leader is when he asked what is the intent, or talked about the intent. What do we already know about this? Can you give me an example? Probing questions. Please explain why or how. How can you verify or disprove that assumption? Or what would happen if? And confirming, you can paraphrase, you can rephrase what they said. You can say, are you saying this? Or do I understand this correctly? Is this correct? And we want to make sure that we ask those things so we truly understand what's going on. It's always a good idea to ask in the very beginning, is this a safe and convenient time for you to talk? And who would be the customer of the work I do? How would I know how to do this work? How would I know if it's being done correctly? How would I know if I'm not passing along a defect? These are different types of questions that we can ask during a Gemba Walk. So what I'd like to do is bring Jesse on again. Jesse, if you don't mind. And we're going to do another simulated Gemba Walk, a brief one, but hopefully you'll get a better idea of how to do a real Gemba Walk. And Jesse, I'm going to ask you if you don't mind to share your screen once again.
Hey there, Mike.
All right, Jesse, all good to go?
All good.
All right, thank you, Jesse. All right, so I will be now taking on the acting role. Hello, Jesse.
Hey, Mike, good to see you.
Good to see you too. So Jesse, you know that again that I thank you for taking the time, and we had set some time apart to do what is known as a Gemba Walk. And so not sure if you're aware of what a Gemba Walk is, but basically what I'm really trying to do is to understand and learn from you. What is the work that you do? I think there's a lot of things that I can learn from you, and kind of look at the process. And then as we're looking at the process, I might be asking some questions, but I really want to focus in on the process and what you do, and kind of brainstorm and think about different things, about perhaps maybe how things can be improved, or how we can modify things to service our customer, that type of thing. So I wanted to first make sure that it's okay. Is this time still okay if we spend the next 10 minutes or so speaking about that?
It's perfect. I've been looking forward to it.
Oh, great. Thank you, Jesse. So maybe you kind of tell me, big picture, what is the process that you're going to be talking about, and what is the purpose or the intent of it?
Yeah, so I'll walk you through my workflow. Right now, my primary focus is putting together and developing our marketing materials for our webinars, and helping the teams get those deployed. So the easiest way to describe that is to actually just go to our daily Kaizen board. Are you able to see the screen that I'm sharing?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so you can see that we have numbers across here, and that just shows us the order in which we're to go. But this is our board where we follow our agenda every morning when we come together. We talk about what we're working on for our daily work plans, as well as we have an area that we can give each other some recognition for things that are going well. In fact, I think you even have some recognition on the board today, Mike. So, so we start out here and just make sure we're all aligned and we know what's going on. And then I can always go back and check my task Kanban. So basically, this populates electronically from Asana into our Miro board. So this is, you can see my colleague Daniel is working in there now. You just saw him flash up on that screen.
That's. Hey, Jesse, can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
At the top, it says plan, do, what, check, and act. What is that for? What does that mean? I mean, why do you split things that way? What's the reason for that?
Yeah, so I mean, that's just our standard process, Kaizen externally with what we coach, and then internally with what we follow. So over on this side of the board is our plan part of the board. So we're getting ourselves together, what we're expecting, and then over here, as we scroll over a little bit, you see the things that we have in progress, starting with our task Kanban. As well as our performance, us tracking how many folks are going to be attending our different webinars, as well as looking at actions that we have coming up. So there's lots of opportunities where some of our clients are also getting involved with our webinars and doing sponsorships, as I think the one we're on today was sponsored by Tundra. And so we're also planning out articles that we're publishing online. So this becomes a collaborative space that all of us can kind of keep ourselves informed of where the things are in progress. So for instance, I am in the process of translating and creating a PDF on the bullwhip effect that our Kaizen team in Italy experienced due to the Corona crisis. So I have that here. The PDF is ready.
Thank you. I just wanted to interrupt for a second. You said you're going to create a PDF of the bullwhip effect.
Yep.
Is that something you could show me right now?
Yeah, it's very easy. Let me just pull my screen over here. Because
a big part of what I'd like to do is actually see what you're doing, some of the things that you have to do, so I get a better idea and I can learn from you.
Yeah, no problem. So you can see, and you might see things in several different languages. But for instance, when we were coming in to do our article on OSHA 3990 with the webinar that you delivered, I came into my Canva platform and took the article and just built it in this platform. It's very easy to do, and the nice part is we have a lot of features like our royalty-free images and things like that. So if I wanted to check something like Kaizen, I can just type Kaizen in, and then I have images that have that word in that we can use and publish, and don't have to worry about any issues there. The really nice part that I like about this program that made things really efficient, rather than trying to use like Adobe PDF or something like that, is it's very simple. When I'm done and I'm happy with my product, I just click the little download, and it's as simple as that. It preps my design. Takes usually about 15 seconds.
So that's been published.
Yep. And here we go. Yep. So there we go.
Okay, good.
Yeah. It was a big time saver.
When you say it's a big time saver, do you know how much time was saved?
Well, so I mean, before, if we were going to do anything, it would have been like some variation of trying to do it in Word, and then trying to do, try to like craft it and make everything look good, and then it was finding royalty-free images or sometimes buying them. So this one platform saves us a lot of time. And the really great part about it is we've been able to collaborate with our peers around the world, and they've also been able to utilize this. So you can see that this article is written in Portuguese. So we've been able to assist their team, and then they've been also able to assist us. So it's pretty cool. I don't think in the Corona crisis, I was expecting to start working with people from all over the world, far more than usual, but that's been a really fun part of this.
Are there any other ways that you can take it? And I'm sorry about this, but we'll probably have to finish up here soon, but I just wanted to ask you one final question. Is there any ways that you can take further advantage of the use of the platform and the sharing of articles throughout our entire organization?
Yeah, that's something that is kind of on the list to use. And now that you mentioned it, I think I'll go over and add this to my task list to work on, because it's something that I've been thinking on quite a lot. And so Friday, I actually do have an availability. So.
Okay, great. So I see that's how you identify opportunities, and so that'll be, when would that be? So the whole team will see that, is that correct? And then
yep.
Okay.
Always open and transparent that we're working on something. So, and we like to talk about it. And then if it's something that's complicated or something doesn't go quite right, so you can see again, Daniel is down here and he's working on changing some things with the Daily Kaizen board. So we also have this tool available for us too when things don't go quite right.
Great. Hey, Jesse, I think for the purpose of this exercise, normally our Gemba Walks would be a little bit longer, and I really want to follow up with you and learn more about this, and I really mean that, by the way. But I think we'll probably wrap it up. But I do want to ask you one final question. Is there anything that you learned or you'll take away from what our little 10-minute discussion that we just had?
Yeah, and I'll share a very, very true story with this. I actually before I came to Kaizen was at an organization that felt that they were doing Gemba Walks, but they were often very argumentative, and it felt very much like senior leaders were coming down to the floor to try to trip you up, I have been in that environment where Gemba Walks are something that staff and teams dread. And I would share with everybody on the call, I feel really fortunate to be in an organization now that we get so much out of it. I really look forward every morning to our daily Kaizen meetings and when we walk processes together.
Great. And did you learn anything from our Gemba Walk that we just had just now? Anything you'll take away?
Not off the top of my head. Sorry.
That's all right. That's all right. Well, good. Jesse, thank you. Thank you for participating. We'll do another one, and I believe I'm sharing my screen right now, And so we'll finish this up. So thank you very much, Jesse.
Thanks.
So quick summary is virtual Gemba Walks work just as well as in-person Gemba Walks, sometimes even better. It's truly been my experience. Just because you're not looking over someone's shoulder at a screen or at their laptop or in their cubicle, we can all see the Gemba right there smack in front of us. And so that's great. But even in a physical world, I've done this on occasion, not too often. There's no reason why we can't use things like FaceTime, where you have for a virtual Gemba Walk. So someone's working at home, but you have someone in a plant, in a facility, and they pull out their phone, they go on FaceTime, we kind of watch the same process, and the person that's holding the phone, we can work with them and do a Gemba Walk and coach them, even though we're further away. Remember, your Gemba Walks need to be added to your leader standard work. There is that relationship between the two, and that will help us to specify what is the process of focus, who's the coachee, who are we working with, and also specific times. So that's going to wrap this up. I'm going to turn it over to Chuck pretty soon to field any questions that anyone might have. But we do, from the Kaizen Institute, really ask you, beg with you to be well. Our thoughts are with you. They're with ourselves, but they're also with you and your families. Please take care as much as possible and do those virtual Gemba Walks. We will have more webinars coming up. We have on Thursday, you might have heard me say already, the online daily Kaizen. And this is a listing of additional webinars and training classes that will be coming up. You saw our process from what Jesse explained, or a part of it. And there's a lot more to that funnel that we need to add to that funnel. So with that said, I want to once again thank you so much to Tundra Process Solutions for being our sponsor. Anyone else who wants to be our sponsor, please reach out to us. Our contact information is at the top of this slide. We are providing online training, webinars. We are truly doing online Kaizen events and online coaching, which works out extremely well. I'm working with clients right now, coaching them on their Gemba Walk. So there's two people doing a Gemba Walk together, and I'm the coach, and I provide them feedback and coaching after they're done. Works out really well. Any customization for materials or courses or webinars that you want, please reach out to us, and we'll try to fit that in and work with you. We're very open to new ideas and ways of doing things. And once again, if you'd like to be a sponsor, please contact us. So thank you very much. Chuck, I'm going to turn it over to you right now.
Okay, thanks, Mike.
You're welcome.
So now, folks, we'll have a few minutes for questions. If anybody has a question, please feel free and unmute yourself and go ahead and ask your question now. Or if you'd rather type it into the meeting chat box, we could take questions there as well. So while we're waiting, we will let you know that you'll receive a follow-up email after the event that'll contain a link to the recording of this session, and you will also receive a link to a feedback form. We'd really appreciate it if you folks would let us know what went well here, where we could improve, and also if you have any suggestions for future webinars. So if you have any questions, are there any questions out there?
Chuck, I'm sorry, it's Johan. How can we question on the chat panel?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, I can talk here.
Yep.
I was about to ask because you were talking about get others to see ways, get others to think on your Gemba Walk. So my question is, who are others? Are others operators, or are others team members or team leaders? Who are others?
So quite frequently what we do is with a Gemba Walk, I think one of the slides I showed was that usually it consists of 2 to 3 people, no more. And that's and I've seen a lot of Gemba Walks or people saying they do Gemba Walks and there's 10 people. So that's not really conducive for a Gemba Walk at all. But oftentimes, so let's say I'm a boss and I have 4 people reporting to me. I would schedule Gemba Walks with the 4 people who report to me, one at a time. I might schedule so that's an other. And so myself and that person, we would be focusing on a process, and we would be watching a process together, and we would be discussing, and I would be asking questions. Now, sometimes the two of us might walk up to a person, an operator doing the work, a mechanic doing the work, and we ask them some questions. So that's another part of the others. So it's the person that we're scheduling the time with and any other people that we might be asking questions during a Gemba walk.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Joanne. Anybody else with a question?
Hi, this is Joanna from Portugal. Can I ask a quick question?
Sure, go ahead, Joanna.
As I can tell from what you said right now, whenever we want to do a Gemba walk, it must always be scheduled with the person or with the team that we intend to see how they work, how they do things. This must always be scheduled. Is that it?
Yeah, it's going to be on a schedule of some sort on your leader standard work. So it's either on the leader standard work as an option, or it's going to be on a huddle board. And so, but we want to, and that doesn't mean that it has to be at 2:10 p.m. To 2:20 p.m. It could be in the afternoon at some point. But what we want to do is make sure that there is a schedule of some sort on either location, leader standard work or on a huddle board, so that we can make sure that we're accountable to that. We've scheduled it, we've done it, it's clear that we've done it, and these are the outcomes.
Yes, but that's in a perspective of me. I am the leader and I'm going to do this Gemba walk. But for the people that are going to be the subject of this Gemba walk, they always have to know that I'm going there, either at the specific time or at that day. That's my question.
It's that, okay, so the
person must not be a surprise. That's what I'm saying. But like I come here, I know that I have to go, and I decide that today I'm going to this team, and
yes.
They don't know, and suddenly I appear there.
Yes, this is not a gotcha. We want open communication, and we want to make sure that it's clear that when we are doing a Gemba walk, that it should be expected. This is we don't want to give it a negative feeling whatsoever.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Joanna. Any other questions out there? All right. Well, we're going to thank our sponsor once more. Thank you, Tundra Process Solutions. And I also want to thank Mike. Good job on the webinar today, Mike. And thank you to all who's stuck around to the end. If you wanted, we're going to be holding another webinar, same time on Thursday, on virtual daily Kaizen. So you're welcome to attend that one as well. Thank you all, folks, and that'll wrap up our presentation for today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.